let me introduce you. How do you pronounce your name?
Tenille.
Tenille. So you are an endurance coach who specializes in integration of mindset, nutrition, training and recovery for female athletes in perimenopause and beyond. Mm-hmm. And you had the accolades of being a Pan American Cup champion, IRONMAN 70.3. And I have to ask you what it means because, it sounds super glorious, and it probably
it is amazing.
But what does it mean? What kind of champion?
It means that I went for a really long swim, followed by a really long bike ride, followed by a really long run. It is half an Ironman. So if people are familiar with an Ironman, which is the marathon after a 180 kilometer bike ride, after, you know, a 4K swim, it's a triathlon.
Because I have to add that you got injury, burnt out, and hormonal chaos.
We didn't used to talk about periods, right? Like, we didn't know that they were even important. We didn't even know that going on the pill meant that we weren't getting our period anymore.
Exactly.
We didn't know anything, really. Or it wasn't, maybe some people knew, but we certainly didn't talk about it as athletes, and we certainly didn't talk about it as, you know, females just generally. And so I entered into sport without realizing that I was really suffering from low energy availability. And what this caused, and this is when I was at the real peak, and this caused just hormonal chaos and, you know, like tons of acne, just being depressed, lack of motivation. But the biggest thing is it took me out of my sport because of the injury, because if you're not healthy, you can't keep going. And so although I had many successes, and although that I had the look, it wasn't until later in my life. I was a geriatric pregnancy, you know, they call anybody over 40 when they get pregnant geriatric. So there I was.
Me as well.
I'm like, okay, so here I want to get pregnant, and you know, they can't, the doctors, the medical profession won't align the fact that I didn't get a period and that I was in hormonal chaos for numerous years with the fact that I had major fertility issues. But it was one of the reasons in which I started realizing, wow, the way we do sport, the way that everything I know and have been coached, the way that people are coaching now doesn't reflect what we actually need, whether it be for the young people, like they're included, but in this stage of my life, I'm focused on what I need. So, you know, I'm in perimenopause and the beyond, and supporting those athletes, because this is where I'm at, and this is what I have delved into and said, well, how do we change the sport system for athletes that want to keep going? And there's one other component of it, is that I believe that it is female athletes, you know, representing what's possible. And by us being active in the world, us taking on things that help us grow, stretch, you know, thrive, that our young female athletes will go, oh, and they'll stay in sport. We have a major drop off that's occurring within sport among female athletes at younger ages. And this is my part of saying, like, we got to stick with it. We've got to show that sport is possible in a healthful way.
Yeah, exactly. And you are supporting female athletes in a number of ways, through cycling team, through group coaching, and by hosting events, females evidence-based information on how to be strong, fit, and moving for the long term. I love it.
Yeah, which you were a guest. It was awesome. So yeah, the way that, you know, part of my passion is getting the science and getting what we know by expertise. And, you know, we're just at the initial stages of research. I'm sure you've talked about this and other lives and in your own work, and to say, like, we don't know everything, so we have to be grounded in experience as well. And it's about getting that experience out into the world. And of course, the niche that I work on work with are people that, let's define athletes. Let's define athletes as anybody who wants to intentionally put exercise into their day. And
so anyone could be an athlete. They don't
in my world, and this is why, because when we think of athlete, we need to think about what is characteristic of an athlete, right? Like, what is it? What do we think about when we see athlete, and then, you know, we need to start changing our image of what athlete looks like. That's just one thing. That's a whole societal thing, right? Like we need to make athletes look like the rest of us and be like, okay, well, what else can it be? Because it's not just somebody who is ripped and sculpted and whatever, that image that comes up. It's all of us that are engaged in movement and in an intentional and in a targeted way. And it's my thinking that we all in perimenopause and beyond have to be intentional and targeted. We have to bring consciousness on how we're doing this, because we need to focus in on strength. We need to focus in on ensuring that we can do what we call as high intensity. Why? Because we need our heart to keep working. We need to stretch those abilities, because estrogen is lowering muscle mass. With lack of estrogen, with the coming down of estrogen, muscle mass will start to just like, blah, if we don't work on it, if we don't stress our body. Stress is a good thing. We want to stress our body. And so that's what I bring to the work that I do, is looking at ways that we can do this in a way that nourishes our body and that stresses our body. Yes, it is hard. It's not always easy, but that's also why we love doing it, because then we get the endorphins and, you know, that kind of like, wow, we did it.
Today, as you really well announced, you know, we're going to discuss athletes in perimenopause and beyond. I remember the first time I had a chat with you, I considered that, I mean, for me, in my mind, athletes were people who do a lot of endurance.
If we take that on and say, I'm going to become that, but that's who I am, we're so much more likely to take actions that align with it. Because then it's something in our core. I have a really strong sport history. So I came into triathlon late in life when I was 27, and then decided I wanted to go to the Olympics. Not your normal thing to do, but regardless, I was also working for the federal government at the time in the Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. When Canada hosted the Winter Games in 2010, I was a senior planner there. And it just fueled my fire. I was like, I got to do this. Of course I'm going to be an Olympian. So I went for it. I sold everything I owned, and then I became an Olympian. I didn't become an Olympian. I tried really hard, but then hormonal chaos like threw me off my path. And so then I transitioned into it by really being broken and having to put myself back together. And then realizing, that we've got to do something different. The way to go about it is taking the 4 elements that I have as part of my coaching business.
Can you explain a bit more about those 4 elements, which is like at the core of your business?
You know, I think this is one of the beautiful things about being in perimenopause and beyond too. Age is such a beautiful thing. It can be a beautiful thing. It can be hard too as we get older, because we have to work with our bodies, that, you know, we have to work with the stressors and the challenges. But it gave me this insight into how important, how we show up, you know, getting rid of the backstories. This idea of how do we set goals? Can we set goals that look different? Can we think about more, not just in terms of looking at excellence at the top of the podium, but the process to get there and being present. You know, we can take on this idea in a really different way. And so that is one component of the work that I do with my athletes, is really looking into like, what are we going to do when it gets really hard? And what do we fall on? And so it's the discussions that are really fun, actually. Like, this mindset is not as sexy as like, oh, I'm going to, work in the training. So it's a little bit harder. It's softer. We talk about values, but it's absolutely essential that we understand it, because in perimenopause and beyond in particular, we hit bumps, a lot of them. We get tired. We have to figure out fatigue. We've got to figure out things that are just going haywire. Why, you and I talked about this at some length, looking at why is my iron, like, what's going on? This heavy flow, these symptoms, like, what is happening into my life?
We can't take anything for granted. Everything has to be to slow down and get to the bottom of things, and then making it work for us again.
Totally, absolutely. And so it was in this space that I'm like, okay, so now that we understand that things have to look really different and we have to be generous with ourselves, we have to be ready to roll, we need to be able to pull back, we need to be able to push when we can and have the energy to do it. And then I was like, okay, so now how do we support the body? Well, we need to nourish every single cell.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. You know, you brought forward in the masterclass series, you know, this idea of hydration, and this is such a critical component of knowing, okay, well, it's not just the foods that we eat, which are incredibly important, but it's the hydration that we bring in. And then on top of that, it's not just about being athlete, it's about supporting your body through the symptoms that we might be experiencing. And so bringing in the insight of, you know, the professionals like you that come in and say, okay, well, yeah, we need to have the carbohydrates, but here are some additional things that you can think about. And, you know, tying these pieces together of health as a foundation, and then we improve upon performance. But if we don't know, if we don't have a consciousness about both the perimenopausal context of which we're working in, then we're going to really struggle to understand how to be generous with ourselves.
I wanted to ask, so is there a major difference in how to train before perimenopause and once perimenopause has started and you're getting into menopause and beyond, basically?
Before perimenopause begins, we need to do the foundation training, you know, your aerobic training, you need to do your intensity training, you need to figure out what's important on all these different levels. Mm-hmm. And that's important throughout. Whether you're in perimenopause, postmenopause, like the training itself is similar or can have similarities. What becomes different is the fact that we absolutely need to make sure that we don't back off of the intensity. So this isn't just for, I mean, this could be for men as well. You know, as we age, there's a reason why a lot of triathletes go long. It's because we don't want to, like, that short stuff hurts. It hurts to go really hard, right? And so what I bring is confidence and helping my athletes become confident in that work and in the work, and we do it together, and you know they get their program, or we do it together in training sessions, and take on the intensity and understanding what does high intensity actually mean. How do we do it progressively? How do we think about strength training? It becomes, I would say, it's important before as it is during. It's important before. It's important from the get-go. We need to think about our young girls doing more strength work too. Like, this is just something that we all should be thinking about. And it doesn't have to mean, and this is the one thing I want to leave people with, you know, it doesn't have to mean that you're going to a gym. There's so much we can do. That doesn't mean, going and, pumping the iron. There's body weight. We start with body weight. We can think about, okay, well, when you're going on a hike and you're doing those lunges and, really pushing up the body weight to get up something, a boulder. Well, guess what? That's strength training. But there's an intention around it, and it's targeted. We do have to think about it as female athletes in perimenopause and in the beyond, because once that there's this beautiful window that we have in perimenopause, and the earlier we can get at it, the better. It's just like when you're a teenager and as you're young and your bones are growing, we want to make sure that bone density is there. Well, guess what? We're doing the same thing in perimenopause. We need to ensure that our bones, our structures are as strong as possible, because guess what? Estrogen starts dropping and our body's going to start adapting, and those tendons, those ligaments, Dr. Claire Callahan talked about this incredibly well, and she's in the UK. The tendons, ligaments, they start not having the spring that they used to have. So what has to happen? Well, we have to be stronger. We just have to be stronger. And so we can manage those things. Like if you're hiking and all of a sudden you realize that you're rolling over on your ankle a little bit more, that's strength work. That's what you need, is more strength work.
And muscle mass is also super important. because I mean, we can build muscle mass up to a point, and then it's just going downhill. So it's easier to manage what we have than to build muscle, even though it's possible. I understand.
Yeah. Well, and then there's the whole metabolic health thing, you know, we can talk about that, but like the whole, like, it's the frustrating 10 pounds. I mean, we talk about it a lot, and it's not something I want to focus on, but quite frankly, is like, how do we deal with that frustrating 10 pounds? Well, we have to kind of be like, okay, this is happening because it's going to happen, or your body, you have to work damn hard to try to help your body maintain that metabolic level at a higher rate, because your body's working for you, right? Like your body's building that up, and it'll pass, but your body's dealing with a change of your hormones.
A woman who train all their life, do they see any benefit or extra performance once they get older?
If an athlete has a really huge base of in the sport that they're doing, the room to improve becomes very small, and what they might be actually after is maintaining. Like, that's just aging, because our VO2 max, like in the scientific way of thinking of it, our ability to maintain that level, like we lose a little bit every year, you know. So what you're after for those athletes that are really well conditioned, you want to hold. Like, can I hold? Can I keep it?
Okay.
I don't know. If, however, So
basically, they've been good all their life, and they just continue to be good, and maybe marginally improving or staying at the same level. Okay.
That sport history is phenomenal. So for those that are listening to this and you haven't been athlete, you know, you did stuff when you were young, and you haven't been doing much, absolutely your body remembers. This is what's fun, is that if you had done something a long time ago, your ability to come back into that space of athleticism will return a lot easier than if you've never done it before. But the bonus of having never done it before, is that you're going to improve. You are going to be that person that went from, you know, a 4-hour half marathon. I'm just throwing numbers out. That's a big time. So all of a sudden you're doing a 2-hour. Like, yeah, like it's just like, it just is just like, oh, wow, I'm that much. I used to walk it, and now I'm running, I'm jogging, I'm running it. I'm, you know, that improvement is massive. So it's a little bit hard actually for those seasoned athletes that have been doing it all their lives, because it's like I got an extra watt. It's like I got a little bit faster, but it's a minuscule you know, improvement, if any.
So that's good news, because those who've done some sport at some point in their life, you know, the body has a memory, so they can come back to their kind of their levels. But what about those now who've never exercised or never enjoyed it, and realize, you know, that's probably a good thing to do? What would you recommend, and what can they expect?
So my recommendation for those that have not found exercise into their life yet, I would encourage them to find something. Start with something that you enjoy. And it might be, say you love, you're the artistic kind, and you like to paint, or you like to do something. Okay, so where can you go that you can paint? And you're going to walk there. And you're going to start by connecting something you love to the movement to get there. So, you know, movement is at the foundation of what we want. It's mobility, it's flexibility, it's you know, we want to think of these really, range of motion is mobility. So how do we move in our body? So finding something that you can connect to, something that you already love, is the first step. And that might be walking. And that's honestly what it is. It might be like, let's think of another thing. Say you're a music player, and you want to listen to the latest, I don't know, something or other. Then what is it that you get to listen to? You get to listen to this this podcast or whatever by walking and listening to it. But you don't get to listen to it unless you're walking. So it's trying to come together with something that you love and creating the discipline around it. And like that, this is what I do. Like you have to like tempt yourself into it, because then you'll do it. Then you'll go, then you'll love it. Then you'll have some fun with it. But it just starts with something. It starts with, movement, whatever it might be, yoga, Pilates, find the movement that you enjoy and the space that you enjoy.
Absolutely. Even when we live in a city, there is a lot that can be done. I wanted to come back to your experience of perimenopause, because you've mentioned, the hormonal changes. Do you mind sharing a bit and what you found useful that some other women could potentially find useful as well? So
I'm in stage 1 of perimenopause. So meaning that I still have a pretty regular cycle. But the things that I'm noticing now is my cycle is sometimes more heavy. So I'm sometimes having annual ovulatory cycles, and I have migraines. My migraines are getting worse. And I have become, to manage that, I am like religious to my magnesium and my vitamin D, religious to them. And then I also preempt my heavy flow with an ibuprofen before it even starts. Okay. Which type of magnesium and which dosage do you take? Magnesium glycinate. It's 560, so it's quite high. I take it once a day. I know that I could be taking, 300 probably twice a day. It would also be good, but for me to like actually take the supplement is like a big deal. I actually take the pill. It's the whatever capsule. Works for you, it doesn't matter. Well, yeah, I mean, I went through this stage. I mean, this is when I was a professional athlete. I wasn't nourishing my body with real food at all. I was just taking supplements. So I went through a stage of like not wanting, and I mean, it's because I didn't know, like, I just didn't get it. I mean, I was eating real food. I was eating just like salads. I ate so cleanly. I ate salads all the time. But I was a professional athlete. Like, I was training over 20 hours a week. You can't get the calories in eating salads. Like, I didn't understand protein. I thought I was having enough, but I was not having enough protein. So what I had done and what I thought is like, I was like eating all this really beautiful food, just not nearly enough of it, a problem for many female athletes in perimenopause and beyond. And then I was supplementing, thinking that I was going to get what I needed. And I'm sure it helped, maybe, I don't know, but that's the problem. So the way that I work with my athletes now in supplementation is like, absolutely, there is a reason to support our bodies, especially in perimenopause and beyond, when we need it. But let's, again, be intentional about it. Let's know it's making a difference. Yeah. If I don't take my magnesium, I'll know. Like, it's bad. Like, it's not good for me. Do you mean you straight away? Not straight away. Usually, I don't know why it happened. My migraine happened mid-cycle. This was the first time I got a migraine mid-cycle. It always happens for the first 3 days of my period, when it was happening before I was taking magnesium. And now that I'm taking the magnesium, it's night and day for me. I mean, maybe in the next cycle I'll have it. I'll have to think about something new because it'll have changed again. Because welcome to perimenopause. But I know, and I have the resources, and I know where I can turn to, in the work that I do, and the people like yourself. I know I can do something about it. So that's been a total game changer for me. Releasing myself that supplements will help my body, and that they can be targeted and really useful, and that magnesium, vitamin D is just like religious, same time every day. That's great. Yeah. And also you kind of clean your diet in the sense that you realize you are not eating enough, and now you're a lot more careful. So you establish some great basis
And then you added the supplements on top, not instead.
Yeah, I gave myself freedom. I was so tightly bound to this idea of performance power to weight, meaning I had, if I weighed less, the less the if I could just keep getting thinner, then I would, the power that I had would, I would go faster, right? You weigh less, you go faster if you have the same amount of muscle. What I didn't realize is that I needed to have the food so I could gain the muscle and then keep going. So I mean, I come to it really honestly, and I followed my coaches. I had 5 different nutritionists try to help me, and it just was so, like, there was some bad advice. But this was again at a time that we just didn't, it just didn't know. I don't blame my coaches, because they were doing exactly what was protocol at the time. Just like doctors, with perimenopause and beyond, like they're just doing what they have been taught. I mean, it's hard, and we don't have to be there anymore.
Exactly. And nutrition has changed a lot recently, so it totally makes sense. Fat used to be the bad guys, and now it's the good guys. I mean, not all fats, and same with protein, and so it's great. Perhaps we should mention that you're offering a 30-minute complimentary call for the women interested in training with you, perhaps. Do you want to tell us more about that?
Yeah, well, this is what I'd love to offer is I would love it if you come onto a call and we can really go through what is the thing you want to, what do you want to create, what do you want to change, what do you want to address as an athlete in perimenopause and beyond. And we will go through together some of the, I mean, a half an hour is not very long, but I can pinpoint pretty darn fast what exactly is an area of curiosity you can bring to your life that you'll be like, aha, okay, this is where I can start. And it might be with a question to bring in your healthcare provider. It might be a question to bring to Severine, or it might be with something that, who knows what we can create together. The other thing is that if you're interested, is we can talk about the community that I've created with Team Element. And yes, I have an Element race team, but then there's also Team Element, and that is for people that are both in the realm of wanting to stay active and keep moving, and have like either swim, bike, or run, or they can do other sports as well, but it's easier if you swim, bike, and run to really gain the advantage of my program. And if they want to stay active, and what that program looks like, and we can talk about that as well. But absolutely, come and spend 30 minutes with me. I'd love to chat. So the group program is, I mean, I have cyclists, so just pure cyclists. I have pure runners. I have pure endurance runners. I have a paddle player. I have swimmers. I have triathletes.
Wow.
And they all get their own program. Yeah, no, it's brilliant, because at the end of the day, we're after the same thing, right? We want to be stronger. We're in perimenopause and beyond. We want to share experiences. We want to understand something different. We want to like delve into how in the world am I going to get this protein in? And so we talk about protein. We talk about, what does it mean to hit an intensity? We join together and go through the struggles sometimes of staying active, to finding your groove. And it's the community that is as important as the training program for which you're part, like that you get. And we have a personal trainer that does the strength training. So it's really about the mindset, nutrition, training, and recovery coming all together in a platform for which you can be your best, you can thrive.
So, and it's a new year. So do you see usually a big influx of people willing to start the year in a better mindset?
We'll see. This is so I've had 2, so I start it every quarter. Okay. So if you want to be part of it, then the next quarter is starting on January 3rd. And so I might change it how I do it, but right now I have 4 intakes a year. So the next intake of athletes is coming up in January 3rd. So to be part of that, you need to know by December October 17th, because there is the holidays that are coming up, and I want you
I
to start
know.
right when we get that new year started. Like, let's start it with a bang. So that's, if you are interested in that, then absolutely get onto my website, Element Sports Coaching, and book a call, and we'll connect that way. And I'll make sure that we have the 30 minutes rather than just the introductory 15.
Pretty much the end of the call. Is there anything else you would like to add? Something that we haven't mentioned and you think would be important to share?
The only thing that, I mean, I always love to remind females and women is that your body is it's genius. It's so darn smart. And that we need to listen. And that's the hardest part for us in busy lives, and, you know, trying to figure out how do we take this all on, is just the reminder that your body is working for you every day to figure out how to deal with the change that we're all in, but it's working for you. And so when you're suffering, say, I'm supposed to pay attention and I can get some help. And I think that's the biggest thing. And that help, you know, if it's a nutritional thing, then definitely go to you. Or if it's if it's the connection point of being athlete in that, you know, come to, you know, we'd be happy to have a connection there and see what's available for you there. But that's the thing. Your body is working for you, and we have to just listen once in a while.